Hello and welcome back to Espresso Insider's YouTube channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at all of the different popular cafe drinks that you're going to find in your local cafe. From cappuccinos to lattes to cortados to even espresso itself. What are these coffee drinks? What's the differences between them? And how can you make them from the comfort of your own home? This should help you become a lot more confident when you enter your local cafe and are looking around and wondering, what should I get? Some people just want a nice regular black coffee, some people want a milky coffee, and some people like their coffee nice and frothy with steamed milk. What are you actually supposed to order? And more importantly, how can you make those coffee drinks that you enjoy in your local cafe at home for yourself? That's what we're going to dive into in today's video. So we're going to start off with the basis of the vast majority of these drinks, which is espresso, talking about milk and how to steam it. Also some of the more niche drinks out there, like even filter coffee, mochas and hot chocolates. This should give you a full breakdown of exactly what you can expect in your local cafe and how you can take that experience home with you. So for the vast majority of these coffee drinks, you're going to need an espresso machine like I've got here and a good quality grinder. Now I'm going to do separate videos breaking down great coffee machines, grinders, etc. in the future. But what I would say is that if you're going to spend some money on an espresso machine and a grinder, I would suggest apportioning a good amount of the budget towards the grinder over the espresso machine. Now that might sound quite counterintuitive, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. The key here is to find a espresso machine, some fresh beans and a grinder that will help you dial in the espresso so you can get consistent results each and every time. I've gone for the Baratza Encore ESP, which I'll do a future video on reviewing it. And what's great about this is that you have a very fine tune available for the espresso grinder themselves. So there is actually a setting here that I will show you that has espresso specific grind settings. So you can really dial in different beans, be that a light, medium or darker roast, or obviously coffee beans from different origins as well. So let's dive into what is the basis of the vast majority of these coffee drinks, which is espresso. Now, espresso comes from Italy, and the first steam-powered espresso machines were made in Italy, so it has got a long, rich heritage. But espresso is basically a little bit different to a normal cup of coffee in itself, and it's usually diluted down with water and some combination of water and milk. Now, espresso is made from very finely ground coffee and highly pressurized hot water or steam that's pushed through the device here into the portafilter and out into your espresso cup. The water to coffee ratio is around about 1 to 2 or 2.5 in terms of coffee to water. So if you put 20 grams of coffee in, you can expect around 40 to 50 grams of espresso liquid out. My espresso machine specifically has a portafilter that takes around 16 to 18 grams of coffee, depending on the roast. But in general, I'm going to be generally looking for anywhere between 35 and 40 grams of coffee out of my espresso machine. Now that's going to vary from coffee machine to coffee machine, so I'd recommend that you look up the instruction, your espresso machine's manual, and see what is the recommended dose of coffee grounds for your espresso machine. Now there is such a thing as a golden ratio, which you may have heard of before, and what that means is the ratio of roughly 2 to 1 from coffee grounds in to espresso liquids out, and you want to be achieving that in around about 25 to 30 seconds. Now the reason for that is that you can get an optimal extraction of coffee oils within that time, but we'll explore that in more detail in a later video. Now I'm going to show you how to make a great espresso that's going to serve as the basis for all of these drinks. I'm going to show you that once, and then it's going to be the same process over again for each of the drinks that I'm going to show you today. But the one thing to mention is that when we're talking about the differences between, say, a cortado, a flat white, a cappuccino, a macchiato, a latte, etc., all these drinks are basically a double shot of espresso, which is usually standard in most of the Western world, paired with steamed milk of some description. The main differences between them are the ratio and the texture of the amount of milk that you're using. Something like a cortado is about a 1-to-1 ratio, whereas a latte or a cappuccino, you're looking at more at 1 to 4 or 1 to 3 coffee to steamed milk ratio. So obviously the more milk you're adding, the more you're diluting down that strong coffee flavour and the more mellow your overall drink is going to be. I'm going to be starting off with espresso based drinks, and that's going to take the form of the following. I'm going to show you espresso, macchiato, americano, cortado, flat white, latte and cappuccino. These are usually the most popular espresso-based coffee drinks that you'll find in your local cafe. So before we start diving into espresso, one thing to mention is that you've probably seen on social media that there's loads and loads of different tools that can overcomplicate the way that you make espresso at home. Now, what you've got to remember is when it comes to coffee is that there's a wide variety and spectrum of people that enjoy coffee at home. Some of them are really, really into it, nerdy, they love coffee, they love all the paraphernalia that comes with it, and therefore all of these WDT tools, leveling devices, spritzing the beans, all that type of stuff that you'll see, it's very much optional. But what I would say is yes, there are benefits to all of these tools, but there's definitely diminishing returns. And if you're just starting out, you've just got a new espresso machine, I wouldn't worry too much about all that stuff. That's definitely one for further down the rabbit hole. What you really need is a good coffee grinder. Now, we can get into talking about brands and different types of coffee grinders in future videos, but whether you're using an electric coffee grinder like me or a manual one, you're going to really want to make sure you can get a nice fine powdery grind size that's nice and fine and probably about the consistency of about cocoa powder to hot chocolate, something along those lines. It's more powdery than kind of fine table salt, and that will give you the perfect grind just for espresso. Unfortunately with coffee, you'll know about troubleshooting in a backwards looking way. So unfortunately you won't know really whether you've got it right or wrong until you pull the shot of espresso, which is a little bit frustrating and can create some wastage, but hopefully it will only take you 1 or 2 shots to dial in your beans and then you'll be good from there. One thing you definitely will need when you're brewing your espresso is a tamper. Now, what this does is it flattens down the coffee grounds so that you have a nice even bed for the water to push through and you get a nice even extraction with a balanced flavour rather than channeling and pockets of coffee that get over extracted in some parts and under extracted in others. So if your coffee machine doesn't come with a tamper, I'd recommend you getting one on Amazon or somewhere else. They're not very expensive, but they're worth their weight in gold. So on my espresso grinder, I'm going to adjust the setting to somewhere between 10 and 20. For these particular beans, I'm going to aim for around about 16, 17 on my espresso grinder. I'm going to add the beans and away we go. Another thing to mention that will help make your coffee brewing experience a bit easier is actually using a coffee scale. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be a coffee scale, but something that you can measure to 0.1 of a gram would be perfect for you if you're getting used to brewing espresso and you're not quite sure how much coffee to use. Now, what I'm going to do is add my portafilter with the dosing ring, which just helps reduce a bit of the mess, onto my coffee scale. I'm going to tare it, zero it out, and then I'm going to weigh out 16 grams of coffee, just enough to fill the portafilter, which should be just the right amount for my espresso. Next, I'm going to pour my coffee beans into my grinder, let them out through the single dosing funnel, and then we're ready to go. So, how do we take this simple shot of espresso and turn it into something silky smooth and delicious? Well, let's find out. The next thing you're going to need is some milk, as the fat content in whole milk is best for steaming. Fill your pitcher up to just below the spout level so you've got room to let the milk expand in size. Then turn on your steam wand and place it just below the surface of the milk until you hear this ripping sound. Once you've let in a few of those air bubbles, raise your milk jug up so that the tip of the steam wand is just below the surface and you hear a quieter sound. When your milk is just too hot to touch, it's time to remove it from the heat. You should have a nice silky smooth sheen just like this, and then you know it's ready to pour. Make sure to clean your steam wand afterwards, otherwise it will become gross and manky. If you need a bit more of a stiff, frothy foam in your milk and you're looking to make something like a macchiato or a cappuccino, then let some air in for a little bit longer at the beginning of your steaming process. This will give you more of a stiff foam, so when you swirl it, you'll see a definitive layer between the micro-foamed steamed milk below and the froth above. Bear in mind that the steam ones you're going to have on a home espresso machine are a lot less powerful than that you'd find in a cafe, so bear this in mind when you're ripping air into your milk. Next up is a macchiato. Simply top your espresso with a bit of milk foam and enjoy. Next up, we've got the Americano. This is made by simply adding hot water and espresso into a glass to dilute down that intense flavour. Next, we've got the Cortado. Equal parts espresso and steamed milk are added to a small glass, so you have a nice combination of intense espresso and smooth milk. Next is one of the most popular cafe drinks, the flat white. This is made from 2 parts steamed milk and 1 part espresso, so you get a nice creamy flavour with that nice strong espresso hit. Another cafe classic is the cappuccino. This is made from 1/3 espresso, 1/3 steamed milk and 1/3 foam. You can pour the foam layer out easily by just lowering your milk jug all the way down to the level of the glass. Next up is the latte. This is made using steamed milk and a lot less foam than the cappuccino. Next up is iced coffee. Allow your espresso to cool a little bit before adding ice and milk to a glass. Moving away from espresso now, we've got filter coffee. This can be made at home using a V60, as you can see here. Coffee is ground a little bit coarser for this as it's got a longer steeping time than espresso. Our next drink is the mocha. This is a combination of espresso and chocolatey milk. This gives you a nice combination of bitter and sweet flavours. The final drink on our list is the hot chocolate. Whilst this isn't a coffee-based drink, it's definitely delicious and gives you a nice sweet treat. This can be made in the same way as the mocha but without the coffee, or you can combine your hot chocolate powder with milk using the steam one like I've done here. Top with whipped cream and enjoy. Okay, so there you have it. That is the breakdown of all of the common coffee drinks you're going to find in your local cafe and how you can make them at home as well. From the iced coffee all the way down to the humble espresso. Let me know down in the comments below which one of these you prefer, and I'll see you on the next one.